Hello and welcome back to Outmaneuver. I'm Faith. I'm here today with a deck tech for you with the deck Sabine. Sabine is great if you're starting out the game because it's a relatively cheap deck to build and it's quite effective. We're going to be going over today two decks. First, a budget deck, and second, a more playable constructed deck. In this first deck, the budget deck, we're just going to use commons and uncommons. Starting us off, we're going to talk about the main core units that can be good in both the budget and later on in the more extended deck. These core units are Battlefield Marine, Green Squadron A Wing, Sabine Wren, Alliance X Wing, Rebel Pathfinder, Echo Base Defender, Fighters for Freedom, Fleet Lieutenant, and Wing Leader. These are all going to be effective units which are going to help you get a very strong board presence very quickly. In space for our two drops, we've got our Green Squadron A Wing and an Alliance X Wing. These are going to allow you to apply early pressure in space. On the ground, our first turn plays are going to be Battlefield Marine, Sabine Wren, and Rebel Pathfinder. Out of the three of these, Battlefield Marine is my favorite, though Sabine Wren does have some times where she might be a little bit better. Rebel Pathfinder finds its home in this deck, especially against a meta with some Bobas, because Crafty Smuggler being a 2/2 shielded, Rebel Pathfinder can trade in nicely. Next up, we've got our three cost units, and these are divided up in two kinds of units. We've got our combat units and our buff units. Starting off with our combat units, Echo Base Defender, being a 4/3 Sentinel, allows you to deal some damage on the ground while also being able to protect your Sabine when she deploys the following turn. Fighters for Freedom allows you to deal extra damage. When you play a red card, you deal damage to your opponent's base directly. Moving over to the buff units, we've got Fleet Lieutenant and Wing Leader. Fleet Lieutenant allows you to, when you play him, give a rebel unit +2/+0 and they get to attack. This helps you deal more damage to your opponent and is nice action compression in order to allow you to take initiative and hit fast and hard. Wing Leader, similar to Fleet Lieutenant, also buffs your units up. However, with Wing Leader, it allows you to give 2+1/+1 experience counters. This will ensure that your units are going to be stronger, going to survive longer, and hit harder. These are all great things in an aggro deck. A nice added benefit is our leader, Sabine Wren, is also a rebel. This means that playing Wing Leader and giving your leader, Sabine Wren, plus a 2+1/+1 counters means that Sabine will be hitting their opponent's base for 5 as long as it doesn't get blocked, and that can deal a lot of damage. In this first version, we have Spec Force Soldier and Bentic 2 Tubes, both one cost early units, which will allow you to get some more forces on the ground early. We also, in this version, have Bright Hope and General Dodonna. General Dodonna allows you to buff up all your rebels +1/+1. Considering that all the units in this deck are rebels, it'll help them be a little bit stronger and hit a little bit harder. Bright Hope may seem like an odd addition at first. However, even though the name of the game in this deck is aggressive and hitting the face, it is still good to have a ship that will protect your other base units. As well, it can be targeted by things like Fleet Lieutenant and Wing Leader, which will also make it stronger and get buffed up by General Dodonna. Going on to the last unit in this deck, we've got Guerrilla Attack Pod. Guerrilla Attack Pod, while it costs 6, is still a very effective unit. As long as a base has 15 damage on it, it enters the battlefield ready. And because it's a 4/6, and with grit, it can either effectively hit a unit and become stronger for next attack, or it can just attack base right away. It's definitely the top end of this deck, but it's one that I think is worth running. Going on to our events in this deck, we are going to be running 3 events, which we're also going to keep into our other deck as we expand the deck. We've got Metal Ceremony, Rebel Assault, and Keep Fighting. Keep Fighting is going to allow our unit to ready up and going to get to attack again. A fun interaction with this is we can keep fighting one of our units that has 3 attack, and after we ready it and after it's attacked, when we play Metal Ceremony, we could put the counter on it afterwards. Metal Ceremony is a great way to, as we have a lot of units attacking, making them stronger by giving them a +1/+1 counter. And Rebel Assault is going to allow us to attack with more than one unit at once, and they're going to get a slight buff. This is known as action compression, which is going to help us to get the initiative and going to keep the pressure on our opponents. Looking at our leader in this deck, Sabine Wren, her ability on her leader side is to tap and deal 1 damage to both players' bases. Using this ability isn't straightforward. Some players will like to always use it to deal damage onto the base. However, there are times when having the initiative is more important, and so really learning about the proper times to use the ability will be important for her success. She currently is our earliest to deploy leader, with her epic action being useful after you control 4 or more resources. This is going to be on turn 3, and that's going to allow you to have multiple units on the ground or space. Hopefully you had them buffed, and when she's coming in, she's just another target that's going to be close to removal. Since this is our common version of the deck, common and uncommon version, we have Echo Base as our base. Energy Conversion Lab is the rare base in green, and it is highly recommended to try to get that as soon as possible. While most of this deck here is common and uncommon, having Energy Conversion Lab will really help your deck to get a little bit more pop and explosion. When you are able to get an Energy Conversion Lab, which is also nice because you only need to get one, I would highly recommend adding Steadfast Battalion, and you can replace someone like a General Dodonna or 1 or 2 of the early drops of Spec Force and Bentic Tutupes. This is because Steadfast Battalion has an effect Overwhelm, so it's able to deal any excess damage to your opponent's base. As well, its on attack effect it gives any unit +2/+2 as long as you control your leader when Steadfast attacks. It is important to note this effect can be used on Steadfast Battalion itself, allowing Steadfast to take out a lot of leaders in one shot. In particular, and most notable, is Boba Fett, who's a Force 7. Even because of the overwhelm, any extra damage is not wasted as it goes right to your opponent's base. Because Sabine comes out at 4 and Steadfast is 5, if you have Energy Conversion Lab, it makes a pretty strong play to be able to just use Steadfast and come in for 7 damage with Overwhelm over one of your opponent's units. Now, let's look over to our more constructed version of this deck. This is the Mean Green Machine. As we see, we still have those core units which we talked about of Battlefield Marine, Green Squadron A-Wing, Sabine Wren, Alliance X-Wing, Rebel Path, and Rebel Pathfinder. We still have Metal Ceremony, Rebel Assault, and Keep Fighting. We've got Echo-based Defenders and Fighters for Freedom. And we've got our buff units of Fleet Lieutenant and Wing Leader. As we can see, out of the rares, we've got 10 rares that we're adding, apart from Energy Conversion Lab. We're adding Red 3, which is another space unit, and it's going to give all of our heroic units Raid 1. All of our units in this deck are heroic except for Steadfast Battalion. But Steadfast Battalion, when you use him with Energy Conversion Lab, is too good to pass up, and it's okay to take a little less efficient with Red 3. Our next rare that we're adding, another 3 of, is For a Cause I Believe In. This is a 3 resource event, which, when you play it, you reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You can deal a damage to your opponent for each heroic card that you reveal. Some decks like to maximize and use only heroic cards in order to get the most value out of this For a Cause I Believe In. In this deck here, we have 3 copies of Keep Fighting and 2 copies of Steadfast Battalion, which will not increase the damage. However, these cards are very good, and to me it's worth taking the chance on those few misses. Another great thing that For a Cause I Believe In allows you to do is to add the cards that you want that you do reveal on the top of your deck, with the other ones going to the discard. This is a very powerful effect to let you control what you're going to draw to hopefully draw what you need to draw. Our next rare that we're adding, which is the 3 of, is our 4/4 Overwhelm unit K2SO. K2 is a very powerful unit, and in my opinion, the best 4-drop in the game. For 4 resources, K2 has a menacing body, dealing 4 damage, and if you do want to take out their units, it does have Overwhelm. When K2SO is defeated, you get a choice to either make your opponent discard a card or to deal 3 damage to their base. A great thing to do with K2SO is just attack their base. Every turn, you're going to be dealing at least 4 damage. They're going to either have to respond to this damage, or if they try to remove K2SO, you're going to be able to deal more damage to them. Don't underestimate the when defeated effect to make your opponent discard a card. If you're able, even though you are trying to go aggressive, there are some games where it is better to take out the cards in their hand and then hopefully allow you to have more things to play and them to have less things to respond with. Moving over to the last rare that we're adding to this deck is kind of a later game card, U-Wing Reinforcements. This is a card that I would side out in a lot of aggro matches, as getting to 7 is very difficult. However, there are matches when you might not be able to get it done right at the end and they might leave your opponent at a few extra life. Playing a U-Wing Reinforcement is a great way to refill your board quickly. Since the highest most of your units are going to get is 3, with a few exceptions, you're going to be able to use all 3 of those units and probably going to get to play all 3 units that are going to combine to a cost of less than 7. Being able to search top 10 cards of your deck is also a great way to get to choose what you need in this situation. I want to quickly now look to the sideboard and discuss some of the things. In this, Spec Force Soldier is in there in case we're playing a deck which has a lot of Sentinels, a lot of ways to stop our damage. As we're trying to play very quickly, we do want to hit their face as soon as possible. Heroic Sacrifice is a card that we have 2 of in the sideboard. It is a 1 resource card, and it gives one of your units +2/+0. After your unit attacks, you sacrifice them. This can be used either in a control manner by removing your opponent's units, or aggressive by attacking the base. As this card has K2SO on the picture, we can assume that it works really well with K2SO, and that is correct. With it on K2SO, we can deal 6 damage from K2SO's attack alone, and then also trigger his when defeated effect, dealing an additional 3 damage. Wolf was a card that we have 3 of in the sideboard. For 2 resources, one of its best effects is being able to play it or attack and make sure your opponent doesn't get to heal. This can be very effective against leaders like Iden, but also against leaders like Krennic or other things that are going to make your opponent restore. One thing to note about Wolf, however, is it's not a heroic unit, so it will not get buffs from Red 3 or will not give you extra damage for our cause, I believe in. Next up, we have Bright Hope again. Similar to in the budget version of the deck, Bright Hope is really good against other aggressive decks in preventing them from destroying you quickly, and it will also allow you to keep your other space units safe. Finally, we have one more copy of U-Wing Reinforcements in case we're running up against a later deck and we want some ways to kind of get back and refill our board. Thank you for listening to this video, and I hope we found it helpful in order to upgrade your deck. Please hit that like button and leave a comment which cards you would add differently in your Sabine deck.